The silence in the conference chamber hung heavy, interrupted only by the soft hum of the Concorde's engines. Commander Jun Park stood rigid in his crisp blue diplomatic uniform, the Golden Earth Coalition insignia catching the light as he breathed. The sweat forming along his collar was the only sign of his nervousness. 6 days in space, waiting for this moment. 6 days since the Lactari ship had appeared at the edge of Jupiter's orbit, broadcasting peaceful intentions in mathematical sequences. Now, they were here. The airlock hissed open, releasing a sweet, almost honey-like scent into the room. The Lactari delegation entered with fluid movements that reminded June of water flowing over smooth stones. Their skin had a pearl-like quality that shifted colors subtly as they moved, primarily pale blue with undertones of violet that rippled across their elongated bodies. The human delegation, 12 representatives from Earth's unified government, collectively held their breath. First contact protocols had been drilled into them, but theory felt woefully inadequate now. The tallest Lactari glided forward. Its upper body branched into 4 slender arms, each ending in 7 delicate fingers. Unlike the others, this one wore a translucent membrane draped over its shoulders that scattered light in rainbow patterns. The Supreme Monarch of the Lactari Confederation welcomes human representatives, it announced, the words flowing through the translation device with musical precision. I am Tal, voice of her luminance. June stepped forward as designated spokesperson, grateful for the anti-anxiety meds that kept his voice steady. The United Earth Coalition extends its gratitude for this meeting. I am Commander Jun Park. Tal's large, pupil-less eyes studied him. The monarch observes your species has achieved remarkable progress despite your biological limitations. Dr. Kim, the xenobiologist, winced slightly at Jun's side. Not the most diplomatic opener. We are eager to learn from the Lactari, Jun replied carefully, and to share what knowledge we can offer. The negotiations proceeded with caution. The Lactari sought permission to establish an observation post on Europa, offering to share certain technological insights in exchange. Their apparent interest in Jupiter's moon raised flags among the security team, but Jun maintained diplomatic composure. Why Europa specifically? Asked Defense Minister Lee, her voice tight with suspicion. The chemical composition of its ice matches substances vital to our biology, Tal explained. We seek only to harvest what we need, not to claim territory. June noticed a smaller Lactari moving near the room's edge, seemingly studying the ship's architecture with interest. Young, perhaps, based on its size and more vibrant coloration. Its curiosity reminded him of his nephew. As Minister Lee pressed for more details about the Lactari's intentions, a sharp alarm blared through the chamber. The ship's AI announced. Structural integrity breach detected in Section 7. June saw it before the others. A section of ceiling directly above the young Lactari, buckling from some unseen pressure. Without conscious thought, he lunged across the room, pushing through startled diplomats. Look out, he shouted, reaching the small alien just as the ceiling panel broke free. In one fluid motion, Jun shoved the young Lactari clear and tried to roll away himself. He wasn't entirely successful. The panel caught his left shoulder, sending pain shooting down his arm as he crashed to the floor. Engineering crew rushed in, emergency force fields activating to contain any atmospheric breach. The fallen panel lay beside June, who was already pushing himself up with his good arm. Teeth gritted against the pain. The entire room had frozen in place. Human security personnel stood with hands hovering near their sidearms, uncertain if this was an attack. The Lactari delegation had drawn together in a defensive formation, except for Tal, who remained still, observing. The young Lactari that June had saved wobbled slightly, its skin flashing rapid patterns of blue and white. It made a trilling sound that the translators couldn't process. Medical Officer CO reached June, quickly scanning his shoulder. Dislocated, but no fracture, she reported, applying a stabilizing field to the injury. Tail moved forward with that fluid grace, towering over June as he sat on the floor. The silence in the room was absolute as the Lactari studied him. "You risk yourself for one not of your kind," Tell finally said, head tilting in a gesture that suggested deep contemplation. "Interesting." June winced as the medical field tightened around his shoulder. "It was instinct," he said simply. "The one you saved is Marin, child of the royal clutch," Tal announced, third offspring of Queen Nari herself. The human delegation exchanged alarmed glances. No one had mentioned royalty would be present at this meeting. "I'm glad Marin is unharmed," Jun replied, allowing Co to help him to his feet. Tal's skin rippled with patterns of light. "The Queen will wish to know more of this. Instinct. Our preliminary studies suggested humans prioritized self-preservation above all else." "We're full of surprises," Jun said with a pained smile. The young Lactari, Marin, approached cautiously, extending one slender hand toward Jun's injured shoulder. Before anyone could intervene, it released a small puff of luminescent particles that settled on his uniform. Where they touched, the pain immediately dulled. "Marin offers healing essence," Tal translated. "A rare gift to one outside our species." The incident changed the atmosphere in the room. Where there had been cautious formality, something new emerged, genuine curiosity on both sides. As the meeting resumed, with June now seated due to his injury, the Lactari spoke more openly about their needs and interests. When the diplomatic session concluded 3 hours later, Tal approached June privately. "Commander Park, the Queen requests your presence on our vessel tomorrow. Your unexpected action has created interest at the highest levels." June glanced at his superior officers, who looked both concerned and intrigued by this development. "I would be honored," he replied, not yet understanding that his simple act of protection had changed the course of human-Lactari relations forever. As the Lactari delegation departed, Marin turned back, its skin glowing with a warm golden light that needed no translation. Some things, it seemed, were universal. The message arrived while June was having his shoulder examined in the medical bay of the Concorde. The discomfort had mostly subsided thanks to Marin's healing particles, but protocol required a full evaluation. The screen on his personal device lit up with an unfamiliar symbol, a spiraling pattern that pulsed softly. "That's the royal seal of the Lactari," said Dr. Co, pausing her examination. "How did you get that?" June stared at the screen. "I don't know." He opened the message and holographic text appeared above his device, written in perfect Earth standard. Commander Jun Park. Your presence is requested at the Central Palace of the Lactari Confederation. Her Luminance, Queen Nari, wishes to speak with you personally regarding matters of great importance to both our species. A transport will arrive in 20 Earth hours. Royal Communications Office. Jun showed the message to Captain Min, who immediately called an emergency meeting of the diplomatic team. They gathered in the secure conference room, faces tense with uncertainty. Director Hyun paced the room, her usual composure fractured. "This is completely outside protocol. No human has ever been invited to their homeworld, let alone to meet their queen. It must be because you saved the royal child," Minister Lee suggested, studying the message again. "They feel indebted." June shook his head. "The Lactari don't seem to operate on debt." Tal made it clear they're more pragmatic than that. Director Hyun stopped pacing and faced June directly. "You're being invited to the royal palace. Alone," she said, emphasizing the final word. "This is unprecedented." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's fragile first diplomatic connection with an advanced alien civilization now rested on June's shoulders. "What if it's a trap?" Security Chief Han asked bluntly. "If they wanted to harm us, they have technology that could have destroyed the Concorde already," Dr. Kim pointed out. Director Hyun sighed. "We need this alliance. The Lactari have technology centuries beyond ours. If the Queen herself wants to speak with you, we can't refuse." She looked at June. "But you need to be careful. We'll implant a subdermal tracker and maintain open communication as long as possible. 20 hours later, Jun boarded a lactary transport vessel. It was smaller than he expected, with interior walls that seemed alive, pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns that responded to movement. Tal greeted him aboard. "The journey to our homeworld will take 6 hours by dimensional compression," the lactary explained. "Your physiology may experience some discomfort." "Dimensional compression?" Jun asked. "Your scientists might call it space folding," Tal replied. The journey passed in a blur of strange sensations. Jun felt simultaneously stretched and compressed, his perception of time becoming oddly fluid. When they finally arrived, he had to lean against a wall to steady himself. The first glimpse of the lactary homeworld took his breath away. From orbit, it appeared as a swirling mass of blues and purples, with great spiraling continents that seemed to be in constant, slow motion. The lactary called it Myrel. The landing was smooth, and when the doors opened, Jun was met with an atmosphere thicker than Earth's but surprisingly breathable, carrying that same honey-sweet scent he had first noticed during their meeting. The royal palace was not a building in the human sense, but rather an enormous living structure that rose from the center of a vast lake of pearlescent liquid. Its towers and spires moved subtly, like seaweed in a gentle current. A floating platform carried Jun across the lake to the palace entrance, where a delegation of lactary waited. Among them, he recognized Marin, who made a trilling sound that might have been a greeting. They led him through corridors that widened and narrowed organically, illuminated by the same bioluminescence he had seen on the ship. The walls occasionally rippled as if responding to their presence. Finally, they entered a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that displayed what appeared to be a live view of space. In the center, elevated on a platform that hovered above the floor, was Queen Nari. She was larger than the other lactari, her body nearly 3 meters tall, with 6 limbs instead of 4. Her skin shimmered with complex patterns of light that seemed to flow and shift constantly. Where the other lactari had simple, elegant features, the queen's face was adorned with intricate bioluminescent markings that framed her large, silvery eyes. "Commander Jun Park," she spoke, her voice carrying directly into his mind without the need for translation devices. "Approach." Jun moved forward, remembering his diplomatic training. He bowed deeply, maintaining eye contact as Tal had advised was proper. "Your Luminance, I am honored by your invitation." The queen's markings pulsed with increased intensity. "You saved Marin of my clutch. This was unexpected. Your species remains difficult to predict." "I acted on instinct," Jun explained. "We protect children, regardless of species." The queen studied him with those silver eyes. "Perhaps this instinct of yours is what we need." Her markings shifted to a deep blue. "Commander Park, my people face extinction. The Void Eaters approach our worlds." The name sent a chill through Jun. Void Eaters? A species from the dark spaces between galaxies. They consume all life, all energy in their path. The Queen's markings darkened further. "They have already destroyed 3 systems at the edge of our territory." Jun struggled to comprehend the scale of the threat. "And you believe Earth can help?" "Not Earth," the Queen clarified. "Humans, your species specifically." She gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing what Jun recognized as human DNA alongside something alien. "Your genetic structure possesses unique adaptability that fascinates our scientists. You evolve rapidly, both biologically and culturally." The Queen descended from her platform, moving closer to Jun. Up close, her size was even more impressive, and the patterns on her skin seemed to reach toward him. "We propose an exchange. You will join me in the sacred milk pools, the ritual of deep knowing." Jun had heard nothing of this in their briefings about lactary culture. "Milk pools." "The substance you saw surrounding our palace," the Queen explained. "It is the medium through which we share knowledge, experiences, essence. It has properties your science cannot yet comprehend." June felt a mixture of fascination and apprehension. "What exactly happens in these pools?" he asked. Queen Neri's markings pulsed once, brightly. "We share," she replied simply. "Everything." Her silver eyes held his gaze, and June understood this was not simply a diplomatic meeting. It was a turning point for both species. "The choice is yours, Commander," Queen Neri continued. "But know that without new strategies, new adaptations, my civilization will fall to the Void Eaters. And yours may be next." Behind him, Marin made a soft sound, and Jun remembered the healing particles, freely given. He thought of Earth, vulnerable and unaware of the threat lurking between the stars. "When would this ritual take place?" he asked. "Now," said the Queen. "The Void Eaters do not grant the luxury of time." Guards escorted June through the living palace, deeper than any human had gone before. The corridors narrowed, the bioluminescent patterns on the walls pulsing in rhythms that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The air grew thicker, carrying a sweet, heavy scent that made June's head swim slightly. "Is it safe for me to breathe here?" he asked Tal, who walked beside him. "Your biology has been carefully analyzed," Tal replied. "The atmosphere here will not harm you, though you may experience heightened sensations." They descended a spiral pathway that seemed to be made of the same pearlescent material as the lake surrounding the palace. With each step, Jun felt a subtle vibration through his boots. "The sacred pools are the heart of our civilization," Tal explained. "Few outside the royal lineage are ever permitted to witness them, let alone participate in communion." June's communication device gave a soft peep, then went dead. Tal noticed his concern. "Deep beneath our palace, signals cannot penetrate," the Lacturi said. "You are now truly alone with us." Director Hyun's warning echoed in June's mind. He touched the spot on his arm where the subdermal tracker had been implanted, wondering if it still functioned. They arrived at a massive doorway that parted like living tissue as they approached. Beyond it lay a vast chamber carved from what appeared to be a single enormous crystal. The ceiling arched high above, reflecting and magnifying the soft blue light that emanated from the floor. In the center of the chamber was a circular pool, perhaps 20 meters across, filled with the same pearlescent liquid that surrounded the palace. Up close, June could see that it wasn't still but constantly moving in subtle currents, occasionally forming patterns before dissolving again. Queen Neri waited beside the pool, her 6 limbs extended in what June had come to recognize as a formal posture. Several attendants moved around her, applying some kind of translucent substance to her skin. "The human has come," she acknowledged. "Leave us." Tail and the guards retreated, the living door sealing behind them. June was alone with the alien queen. "Commander Park," Queen Neri's voice resonated in his mind. "The milk pools have existed since the dawn of our evolution. Through them, we have shared knowledge across generations, preserved the memories of our ancestors, and evolved as a unified consciousness." "You called it milk," June said, studying the liquid. "Is it biological?" "It is living," she confirmed, "but not as you understand life. It exists between states, capable of storing and transferring neural patterns, memories, and genetic information." June approached the edge of the pool cautiously. The liquid rippled as if responding to his presence. "And you believe this will help against the Void Eaters?" "They destroy us because they cannot understand us," Queen Neri explained. "They are singular, consuming consciousness. But if we can integrate human adaptability into our collective knowledge, we may find new defenses." The chamber housing the royal milk pools glowed with soft blue light. June stood at the edge, watching the pearly liquid ripple. His reflection looked back at him, distorted and shifting, as if already becoming something else. "I need to remove my uniform," he asked, noting that the queen wore nothing but her natural skin. "The milk interacts directly with biological material," she confirmed. "Synthetic barriers would prevent proper communion." Hesitantly, Jun removed his uniform and equipment, placing them carefully at the pool's edge. The air against his skin felt unusually warm, and somehow charged with energy. "Your apprehension is natural," Queen Neri said, her outer membrane already dissolving as she entered the pool. The liquid rose around her, seeming to embrace her form. But necessary bridges are rarely comfortable to cross. Taking a deep breath, Jun stepped in. The sensation was immediate, like plunging into water that was simultaneously hot and cold. The liquid had a consistency unlike anything he had experienced, thicker than water but flowing more freely, enveloping his body in a gentle embrace. Then the first wave hit him, memories not his own flooding his consciousness. He saw the Lactari homeworld through Nari's eyes, not as it was now, but as it had been millennia ago. Wild, untamed, filled with massive creatures that glided through ancient seas. He felt her first emergence from her clutch pool, the instinctive recognition of her royal genetics, the weight of destiny even in those first moments. He experienced her ascension, the ritual consumption of her predecessors' memories, the sudden crushing responsibility for billions of lives. He understood their complex biology, how their bioluminescence was both language and emotion, how their bodies constantly regenerated through exposure to the sacred milk, how their consciousness existed partially within their physical forms and partially within the collective memory of their species. He witnessed the first detection of the Void Eaters, dark shapes moving between stars, leaving only silence where thriving worlds had once been. He felt Neri's fear, not for herself, but for her entire species, a cold dread that had driven her to seek help from aliens they had only observed from afar. Simultaneously, she experienced his memories. June could sense her presence moving through his life experiences, his childhood in the rebuilt coastal city of Busan, his fascination with the stars, the loss of his parents in the Great Flooding. She witnessed Earth's recovery from environmental collapse, the unification that had followed decades of conflict, humanity's first tentative steps into their solar system. She experienced Earth's oceans through his memories of swimming as a child, felt human resilience in his years of training and perseverance, understood the chaotic beauty of humanity's contradictions, their capacity for destruction alongside their drive to create and protect. Time lost all meaning in the pool. June couldn't tell if minutes or hours had passed. The memories came faster, deeper, not just surface experiences, but fundamental understandings. He grasped Lactari mathematics, their perception of 11 dimensions, their biological connection to the quantum fabric of reality. The milk around them began to glow more intensely, responding to their shared consciousness. June felt his body changing, cellular structures shifting subtly as the milk carried information between them. It wasn't painful, but the sensation of transformation was profound. A vision formed in their shared mind, Lactari and humans standing together against a darkness that consumed stars. In this vision, they were neither fully separate nor fully combined, but something new, each strengthened by the other's nature. When the vision faded, Jun became aware of his physical form again. The milk was draining away, leaving him and Queen Nari on the crystal floor of the chamber. His skin tingled with residual energy, and when he looked down, he saw faint, subtle patterns just beneath his skin, reminiscent of Lactari bioluminescence. Queen Nari rose, her form somehow both familiar and alien to him now. He knew her as intimately as he knew himself, understood her thoughts almost before she expressed them. "It is done," she said, her voice now carrying layers of meaning he hadn't been able to perceive before. "We are changed." June stood shakily, feeling simultaneously exhausted and energized. "I understand now," he said. "The Void Eaters, they're worse than I imagined. And your species is more remarkable than we knew," Neri replied. "Your adaptability is not merely genetic, but extends to your consciousness. You can change your thinking in ways we cannot." When they emerged fully from the pool, both were fundamentally changed. June could perceive the world around him with new senses, could see energy patterns in the living walls of the palace. More significantly, he carried within him a deep understanding of the Lactari that no human study could have achieved. "What happens now?" he asked, though he already partially knew the answer from their shared consciousness. Now, Queen Neri said, her patterns glowing with renewed purpose, we prepare. The knowledge we have exchanged will spread through both our species. Together, we may have a chance. June nodded, feeling the weight of two civilizations resting on what had transpired in the milk pool. I need to return to my people. They need to know. They will see the change in you, Neri warned, as my people will see it in me. As June dressed, he caught his reflection in the pool's now still surface. His eyes had changed, carrying a subtle luminescence that hadn't been there before. The ritual had marked him visibly as something new, neither fully human nor Lactari, but a bridge between worlds. The Concorde's docking bay fell silent as June stepped from the Lactari transport vessel. He had been gone for just 7 Earth days, but the crew stared at him as if greeting a stranger. Director Hyun stepped forward, her professional composure briefly slipping as she took in his appearance. Your pupils have changed color, Director Hyun noted, her voice carefully controlled. And your skin. June ran a hand over his face, aware of the subtle luminescence that now pulsed beneath his skin when his emotions intensified. His once dark brown eyes now shimmered with flecks of silver that caught the light. The ritual altered me, June nodded, but I understand them now. I know how we can help each other. The medical examination lasted 5 hours. Dr. Seo's instruments detected changes throughout June's body, enhanced cellular regeneration, improved neural pathways, and trace amounts of an unknown substance integrated into his DNA. His brain activity showed patterns never before recorded in humans. Am I still human? June asked as Dr. Seo reviewed the results. She looked up from her screens. Mostly. But parts of you have been enhanced. Your cellular structure has adopted some Lactari properties while remaining fundamentally human. The debriefing with Earth's Security Council was tense. June sat alone before 20 screens, showing the concerned faces of humanity's leaders, explaining what had happened in the milk pools and the threat approaching both their worlds. The Void Eaters don't just destroy planets, he explained. They consume consciousness itself. They've already taken 3 star systems at the edge of Lactari space. And why should Earth involve itself in an alien war? Asked the representative from the African Union. June closed his eyes, accessing memories that weren't originally his own, because they won't stop with the Lactari. Their nature is to consume all sentient life. We're simply next on the menu. His new perceptions helped him rid the subtle shifts in their expressions, the micro-tensions that revealed their fears and doubts. This was another gift from the milk pools, enhanced empathic awareness. I propose a joint defense initiative, Jung continued. The Lactari Queen has already agreed. Their biotechnology combined with our tactical innovations could create defenses neither species could develop alone. The Council remained skeptical until June demonstrated some of his new abilities, solving complex mathematical equations instantly, perceiving energy fields around electronic devices, and most impressively, remotely activating a Lactari communication crystal that had been brought for study. My connection with Queen Neri remains active, he explained as the crystal glowed in response to his thoughts. We share knowledge in real time across the vastness of space. 3 days later, Earth agreed to the alliance. Over the following weeks, June experienced enhanced strength and unprecedented mental clarity. His wounds healed within hours, and he could process information at speeds that astonished the scientific team monitoring him. Sleep became optional, a luxury rather than a necessity. On the Lactari homeworld, Queen Neri likewise exhibited new traits, adaptability and creative problem-solving previously unknown to Lactari. Her reports, shared through their mental link, described how she could now conceptualize multiple solutions to problems rather than following the logical but linear thinking typical of her species. My advisors are disturbed by the changes, she communicated to June during one of their mental exchanges. They fear I have become too human. My people have similar concerns, June replied across the vast distance. But results speak louder than fears. Together, they designed defense strategies combining Lactari biotechnology with human tactical innovation. The Lactari contributed living ships that could heal themselves and weapons that operated on biological principles rather than mechanical ones. Humans contributed unpredictable battle strategies and adaptive tactical systems that could evolve during combat. June divided his time between Earth's new defense headquarters and the Lactari royal palace. Travel between the worlds became routine as more humans and Lactari underwent modified versions of the milk pool ritual, less intense than what June and Neri had experienced, but enough to facilitate understanding and cooperation. His body continued to change. By the 6th week, June could communicate telepathically with any Lactari and with the humans who had undergone the ritual. His skin now displayed subtle patterns when he was deep in thought, a physical manifestation of his mental activity. News of the unprecedented alliance spread across the galactic community. Other species, previously hesitant to engage with either humans or Lactari, began sending delegations. The Morith, silicon-based entities from a heavy gravity world, offered their expertise in gravitational engineering. The Vosh, a species of gaseous consciousness inhabiting manufactured bodies, contributed their understanding of the space between dimensions. They fear the Void Eaters more than they fear us, Jum observed during a strategy session with Queen Neri. They sat in a hybrid chamber specially designed to accommodate both species, surrounded by holographic displays showing defense formations. Fear can unite even ancient enemies. Neri agreed, her patterns shifting thoughtfully. The question is whether it will be enough. Their connection had grown deeper over time. During quiet moments, June sometimes found it difficult to separate his thoughts from hers, their consciousness flowing together like currents in the milk pools. It should have been disturbing, but instead felt natural. Right. They were discussing the placement of early warning beacons at the edge of Lactari space when June suddenly froze. A vision flashed through his mind. Massive dark shapes moving between stars, a cold hunger that consumed everything in its path. Queen Neri saw it through their connection, her patterns flaring with alarm. They changed direction, she said, rising from her seat. June nodded grimly. They've detected our alliance. They're coming faster than we predicted. Emergency protocols activated across both worlds. The partially completed defense fleet moved into position, living Lactari ships alongside mechanical human vessels. Ground-based weapons powered up, and civilian populations began moving to shelter areas. 48 hours later, June stood before the combined war council of 7 species. His skin glowed with intense patterns as he connected mentally with the Lactari representatives and the advanced sensor networks at the edge of the system. The Void Eaters attack in 3 days, Jum announced, projecting the sensor data for all to see. The display showed hundreds of dark, shapeless masses accelerating toward them, consuming everything in their path. We'll be ready. The room erupted in activity. Officers from different species coordinated final preparations, their former differences forgotten in the face of common extinction. June felt Queen Neri's presence in his mind, her determination flowing into him and strengthening his resolve. That night, alone in his quarters, June studied his reflection. The man who had first boarded the Concorde in a crisp diplomatic uniform was gone. In his place stood something new, not fully human anymore, but not Lactari either. A bridge between worlds, the first of what might be a new kind of being, if they survived the coming days. He placed his hand against the window, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Void Eaters approached, hungry for the light of consciousness. And somewhere else, Queen Neri did the same, their minds touching across the void, preparing for the battle that would determine the fate of both their species. The void between stars rippled as the Void Eaters emerged, their ships, if they could be called that, resembling massive black teardrops that absorbed all light around them. They moved in perfect unison, a hive mind with a single purpose: to consume. June stood on the command deck of the flagship Harmony, a hybrid vessel created from both human and Lactari technology. The living walls pulsed with information, and the crew, a mix of 7 different species, worked with practiced efficiency. "They're dividing into 3 attack groups," Jum announced, perceiving the enemy movements through his enhanced senses. Just as we predicted. Through his mental link, he felt Queen Nari acknowledge the information from the planet's surface. The defense of the Lactari homeworld had been meticulously planned, with Jum commanding the space forces, while Nari coordinated ground defenses. "All ships activate countermeasures," Jun ordered. Along the fleet, specialized devices powered up, generating chaotic thought patterns designed to confuse the hive mind of the Void Eaters. The enemy response was immediate. Their formation faltered, individual ships briefly breaking pattern before reforming. It wasn't much, but it created the opening Jun had been waiting for. "Strike groups 1 and 4, engage as planned," he commanded. The battle for the Lactari homeworld lasted 27 hours. The Void Eaters fought with relentless hunger, their technology capable of draining energy directly from ships and living beings alike. 3 times they nearly broke through to the planet. Jun implemented strategies that confused the hive-minded Void Eaters, nonsensical patterns, false retreats, and sudden changes in tactics that no purely logical mind could anticipate. His human unpredictability, enhanced by Lactari precision, kept the enemy off balance. "We're losing the orbital defense ring," reported a Morith commander, her crystalline form flickering with stress. "Redirect Squadron 6, Jun ordered, simultaneously sending Queen Nari a mental warning of incoming threats. On the surface, Queen Nari led the ground forces, her new intuitive thinking anticipating enemy movements. When a group of Void Eaters broke through the orbital defenses, she had already positioned bioweapons at their likely landing zone. The attackers found themselves trapped in a field of living energy that mirrored their own consumption abilities back at them. "The bioreflection is working," she communicated to Jun. "They cannot feed where their own hunger is reflected." The tide turned during the 22nd hour. A combined strike force of Lactari living ships and human tactical vessels managed to isolate a section of the Void Eater fleet. For the first time, they captured one of the dark vessels intact. "Analysis confirms they're vulnerable to consciousness fragmentation," reported Dr. Kim from the science vessel. "We can break their hive connection." Jun felt hope surge through the mental network connecting the allied species. Deploy the separation pulse across all ships. A wave of energy spread out from the allied fleet, not destructive but disruptive, designed to break the psychic links between individual Void Eaters. The effect was immediate. Enemy ships began moving erratically, some crashing into each other, others retreating in apparent confusion. "They're not used to existing as individuals," Queen Nari observed through their link. "They don't know how to function alone." The final hours of the battle saw the Allied forces pressing their advantage. Freed from the need to defend, they pushed forward aggressively, driving the fractured enemy back. The Vosh deployed their dimensional technology to create pockets of altered space that trapped enemy vessels. The Morith gravity weapons pulled others into tight clusters where they could be contained. When the last Void Eater ship retreated, disappearing into the darkness between stars, celebrations erupted across the planet. The cost had been high. Nearly a third of the Allied fleet destroyed, thousands of lives lost. But extinction had been averted. Jun collapsed into his command chair, physically and mentally exhausted. Through his link with Queen Nari, he felt her similar fatigue mingled with profound relief. "We should have killed them all," argued the Vosh commander, her manufactured body displaying red warning lights. "They will return, stronger and adapted." "No," Jun said firmly. "We've broken their unity. They'll need time to recover, to learn how to exist as individuals. When they return, if they return, it will be different." 3 weeks later, as the Allied worlds began to rebuild, delegates from 17 species gathered in the Great Crystal Chamber, where Jun had first entered the milk pools. The room had been modified to accommodate the diverse biological needs of the representatives, from the methane-breathing krill to the radiation-dependent luminar. Queen Neri stood at the center, her patterns glowing with formal intensity. Beside her, Jun wore a new uniform that had been created for his unique physiology, capable of displaying his emotional patterns while maintaining human comfort. We faced extinction and found salvation not in isolation but in union. Queen Neri addressed the assembly. What began as two species has become something greater. The delegates murmured in agreement. Many had observed how the human-Lactori bond had created capabilities neither species possessed alone. Some had already begun requesting permission for similar exchanges. This union would not exist without the ritual, Queen Neri continued, gesturing to Jun. What began as desperation became transformation. We propose formalizing this alliance into a permanent galactic concordance. The terms were presented: mutual defense, knowledge exchange, trade agreements, and most controversially, controlled biological sharing between willing participants of compatible species. The debate lasted for days, with some representatives expressing fear about lost identity and others arguing enthusiastically for the potential benefits. On the final day, Jun stepped forward to address the concerns. His appearance had continued to evolve, his skin now displaying clear Lactori patterning when he spoke, his eyes possessing the silver sheen of the royal lineage. Yet his movements, his expressions, remained distinctly human. "I understand your fears," he said. "I felt them too, standing at the edge of the milk pools. But what I discovered there wasn't the loss of myself, but an expansion." He paused, allowing his patterns to pulse with sincerity. "The milk pools showed us that our differences are our greatest strength. Together, we've created something neither of our species could achieve alone." The vote that followed was nearly unanimous. The Galactic Concordance was formed, with Earth and Niril as its founding worlds. Construction began on a neutral headquarters in deep space, designed to incorporate elements from all member species. 1 month later, Jun returned to Earth for the first time since the battle. He walked the shores of Busan, watching children play in the rehabilitated ocean. A young girl stared at his glowing skin patterns before her mother gently pulled her away. "It'll take time," said Director Hyun, who had accompanied him. "Humans fear change. We adapt," Jun replied with a smile. "It's what saved us." That evening, he stood on a balcony overlooking the sea, feeling Queen Neri's consciousness touch his own across the vast distance between their worlds. They shared the day's experiences wordlessly, each enriched by the other's perspective. The new era of interspecies cooperation had begun, all because one human diplomat had bathed in milk with an alien queen. What had started as a desperate gamble had transformed not just two individuals, but the future of all sentient life in their corner of the galaxy. As the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Jun wondered what other transformations awaited in the milk pools, and what new forms of consciousness might emerge from those willing to cross the bridges between species, between ways of being. The possibilities were as endless as the stars themselves.